Nevantu tundona pamberi apa pana mambo anozwi chief ndiye anoema nekambani. Tondoona chief una MP unaema pamwe na DA ndio venyika yakona zviva andizopere no zvinosema ndai yakutorwa iyi totamako kulima ndiani watinomboti watinozopa zvichemo zvedu. Pana mambo chief panani MP unozi ndiye hurumende. Tondoona DA tinoti hurumende yakona. Hino zvavaliyo vanouya vachihamba mumaminda medu veitoti nekambani yavo zvichitora vatora vozoti kambani chena ndobhuira vaya kuti akurini salimai chief wakamboemere chinhu zvana chief kana chief wakaemera ruzhinji rwevanhu kuti azwi chief vanhu kuti azwi ndi MP handiti nguve vanhu vesa wazaita DA ndiwe hurumende yakona totonyanya kutoziva kuti ndiwe uri padhuze nani nehurumende yako ndiwe hurumende. Mouya moema uchiti isusu manje masabhuku manje amuchauyiwe kuti muzoema nesino chichitaura kuti takuda kuti chiite zvakati. Motoende patotorana megama kumati apa munofanira kuguma panapa totodaro kuti ndizvo vanoita moguma muguma panapa havana basa ngoti vantu ava ndiri mambo ini munofanira kurima michenga pasi rimirai zviro zvirondo pasi kuti inini ndiri MP inini ibani iri rine mbowani iri ibani nembowani yakambumuzwa ita ruporini kutaura zvozvo kuti ibani namuntu zvoki arina muntu isusu takatsikirwa munomu ndimwari munomu tuchizoita vauyi vokuuya takabva kupi ko takabva kupiko tiri vantu here vakumasikatazi okuuya ndoma takabarirwa munomu nenyika yedu ivo vanoniniwo vanasitsirodzi vakatanga vauya ivava vakauya isusu mateteguru tiri muno.
Good afternoon, Zimbabwe, and welcome to Zimbabwe Daily. My name is Yvonne Muchaka. It's a pleasure to be with you once again. Welcome to Behind the Microphone, a program that takes a look at issues that are making the headlines, sometimes subtly, sometimes they give a bold shout, depending on which media organization is reporting on the story. So today we bring you an issue that has been making rounds, albeit on a low scale, because it is only the people connected to the village who have been making the sound, who have been making all the noises. So we bring in studio Clarice Maduko. I'm going to allow him to fully introduce himself as we draw closer to what is happening in Chisumba-nje. Welcome, Clarice.
Okay, thank you very much, Yvonne. It's my pleasure to be your host. And surely the issue that we'll be discussing is something that touches my heart. My name is Clarice Maduko. As you have been told, I'm the director or team leader of Platform for Youth and Community Development. But more specifically, I'm a resident of Chisumba-nje in Ward 26. My village head is Mtombori. So right. I'm very happy to be part of this program so that at least we can share some of things that we have longed to share with the public.
Thank you so much. And the video that we just played there is was coming through from Chisumba-nje area, and that is Headman Chinyamukwakwa raising their concerns over the abuse they are going through under the hands of the alleged abuse that they're going through. And we are talking issues of a running battle with the land in that area. And we want to find out exactly what is going on, what is the background to this whole mess, and why is it coming out now, and how come the people are raising the concerns that they're raising. We understand that the village says they are ready for a running battle with Greenfuels, but why? Clarice, give us a background into this issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Yvonne. I think the public may be interested. I think there's been a lot of reports. Some of them, people didn't have access to the villagers. What we are facing here is something that started in 2008. In fact, as a villager, we started seeing an investor. In 2008, the investor was identifiable as McDom Investment, McDom Ratings.
Right.
And the public didn't have much information about this investor. But over time, when we started engaging with the investor, at that time, I represented the community on the side of our Platform for Youth Development. That is how we were known then. Now we are Platform for Youth and Community Development. And when we were doing other programs that were dealing with the post-2000 election violence, I mean, in 2008, the elections were very violent.
Right.
So we're part of the young people who were going around trying to encourage the young people not to react violently to the situation. But then the issue that then dominated us was the issue to do with the investor, McDom Ratings, McDom, and the public wanted to know what kind of an investor was coming in, plowing down people's land, and the public didn't have information about that investor. Right. So we then tasked by the community to say, can you assist us to verify who is this investor? What is their mandate? Because when the investor came, the public knew the investor that was there. We knew ADA,
right,
which is a parastatal. So when people found someone called the McDom Investment, McDom Ratings, they were not sure who he was or who that institution was. So right. When we got to then follow up, that's when this issue started. So that was 2008, around December. And the issue went on 2009 in January. And we had some meetings in Chinyamukwakwa. That was on the 15th of December 2008. Then another meeting in Chisumbanje on the 18th of December 2008, where the traditional leadership, who were the prime movers of wanting to know this kind of an investor, because the investor was taking up land and telling people not to plow. So when we were mandated by this traditional leadership, they gave us three questions to say, can you go and establish this kind of an investor? Who is this investor?
Right.
What is the relationship of this investor with ADA? And what is the relationship of this investor with the government of Zimbabwe? What is the relationship with the investor with the president of Zimbabwe? I think these questions were raised because when the investor was coming in and when people were asking questions, the answers that were coming from those who were doing business on behalf of the company to say, no, we are coming because we are now operating where ADA used to operate. We have replaced the ADA. But ADA had not spoken to the community. Then the second was that people would say, but ADA has not told us. They said, no, don't worry about ADA. We are working with government. We are government project. And then beyond that, when people would say, but the government is supposed to do certain things, A, B, C, no, but we are working, we have been sent by the president, and then the president was President Mugabe. Right. So that was the background to the issue. Then from there were some other issues that began to happen. So in 2008-09, people plowed, but around March of 2009, when people were about to harvest, then the company came in and plowed people's crops down. It also happened for 2010, 2011, until then with the role that we started playing, that can explain as the background to say, how did this investor come?
Right, but why were they now plowing down people's farms?
I think that is what leads us today. I think in 2000, we are talking of 13 years ago.
Right.
When they were plowing down, their argument, which has then some of it proven wrong, was to say that because we are doing business in other land, the area that the people had plowed was other land. So they were simply taking care because it was their land. That was the first argument.
Was it other land?
That's the one of the sticking question to today as we are talking in 2021 in September. Whereas the ADA has stipulated land that is well known. And I think there's been arguments that are currently undergoing a lot of policy interrogation to say when ADA was operating, it was operating in a well-known land that is 5,112.
Right.
And when ADA was plowing, it did not exhaust that land. So it was living well with the community. So the community were plowing, some of them were plowing in areas that were known to the other land. Okay. But most of us were plowing in areas that were not linked up to other as communal land. And that has been confirmed that it was communal land, it was not other land.
Right. So it is now outside the bounds of other land that the new investor was now plowing down the crops.
Yes, I think this is one of the areas that we may need to really deal with because the public kind of is following up to say when ADA was operating, ADA then became moribund. It failed to sustain its business. Then it asked the investor to come.
Right.
When the investor came, the first thing was to operate in other land. I was part of a meeting that then came up, which we call DEPIC, District Ethanol Plant Implementation Committee, where we were then questioning to say where is other land and where is communal land. I think in those meetings it was confirmed, I think the public must be clear, it was confirmed that the land that ADA was operating was known. And the company wanted land beyond ADA. And the company, by then, when we were in the DEPIC, it was Greenfuel, they applied for land to Chipinge Rural District Council, which shows that they were aware in their papers that the land that they wanted to lease was no longer other land. They wanted land beyond other land. And then they written letters to say they were looking for 40,000 hectares of arable land, which means clearly in that first argument, we need to be very clear, those who are following us, to say that other land was defined. This was now communal land that the company was seeking to use.
Right. All right, we are coming to you live from our Zimbabwe Daily Studios, and we are talking to Clarice Maduku. We just wanted to get clarification on what exactly is going on in Chisumbanje and how the community around Chisumbanje and Chinyamukwakwa are being affected by everything that is happening around Greenfuel, because we've been hearing a lot of shouts, a lot of noises coming from those areas, and they're saying Greenfuel is plowing down our fields. It also talks about polluted rivers in the area. The community feels disrespected because they say no consultations whatsoever have been done. And there are calls for a review of legal frameworks governing land rights and acquisitions in communal areas. And this is the conversation that we're having with Clarice Maduku all the way from the vicinity of the area. Now, as we just want to continue to hear from you the efforts that have been taken by the local community to address the challenges that you have raised.
Yes, thank you very much. Before I go to the effort, I think the public may need to understand what is taking place within this context. That when this challenge started in 2008, 2009, I think some of the things that made it to be prolonged up to now was that we were under the leadership of President Robert Mugabe. And then I think the policies that President Mugabe was using, the policies of populism, they were talking of indigenization. I think Zim asset was then what was being spoken as the government policy. So what was happening is that when this company came, when the investor came, the idea was to say, with the Zim asset, we want to improve the livelihood, agriculture. But now, when we're interrogating, we realize that the 4951 kind of policy that was proposed by Zim asset mandated us as the community to then question and say, what is our benefit?
Right.
So the clash started from wanting to say, what do we benefit from the project? Because it is a project that is coming to save a Zim asset policy. And then we, in terms of what we say, number one, what we then did as a community to answer the question, we had to interrogate to say, this company is coming in to do investment. What kind of a business model are they using? So we engaged with the government of national unity then to try and understand the business model. And we went on to understand that the business model that they were using was build, operate, transfer, which was 20-year-old. To say after 20 years, the company would then relocate, and then the benefits of the project would be accrued to the community.
Right.
That was the first thing that we did. And in doing that, we realized that there was very little that would accrue to the community. But still, there was a lot of shrouded detail about that kind of a business model. To say how much would the company, how much would be the government on in terms of the business model.
Right.
So when we questioned that, we were able then to engage. I think that whilst we're seeking for information to say what is the business model, we also engaged with the government. Then it was government of national unity. We were able to engage with about 11 ministries that involved the Prime Minister then, Mr. Morgan Changirai. We engaged with Mr. Elton Mangoma, who was the Minister of Energy then the Deputy Prime Minister, Professor Adam Tambara, who then at the end of the day constituted a cabinet committee that visited the community to verify some of the issues that we were lobbying as we were engaging. So in that engagement, we are aware that there was fruition in that engagement. And when we tell the public that engagement works, we always use that when we engage the cabinet, when we engage members of parliament, they then came. We were asked, they had time with us at the community to hear what was happening. And then there was a report produced by the Deputy Prime Minister. And we want to always associate with that report. It was produced on the 18th of September in 2012. And it had a draft of recommendations. Some of the recommendations addressed the issue that were being raised by the community, which was to say, what is our benefit, number one. Then it was also questioning to say, there must be a consultative process that is legitimate, that is like popularized. And then it was established. And some of us who were like leading the engagements, leading the consultations, who were elected, I was elected popularly to that committee with others. So we started having formal meetings. So if the public were to say you are making noise, they must also know that we have engaged at the level of the cabinet.
All right.
Then in that around engagement again, then things deteriorated after the government of national unity expired.
Right.
The company, because it was also being advised by other people who are very political and partisan, who were saying in an argument that now that the government of national unity is expired, we don't want a committee that behaves like we have an opposition in the country. They wanted to behave like we are the ruling party, we don't have an opposition, we want to rule on our own. So it was, and I have to be very clear, it was ZANU-PF driven. Right. And then the local member of parliament, Comrade Enoch Porosinga, is working hand in hand with Mr. Zikamai Mafaire, who was then the Minister of Energy. He had replaced Mr. Elton Mangoma. They then said, let's disband this platform where people are meeting, because some of the people that are there are getting excited. They think they have power. We are the ruling, government. So it was disbanded. So it's one of the issues. But running through to prove to the public that we have been engaging as a strategy. What are we doing to the community? Then things deteriorated around 2014 to the extent that we then went back to parliament. Then we're still running under the Zim asset. Then we questioned, we went to parliament, we were given attention by the indigenization committee, portfolio committee that was led by Mr. Mayor Wachikajen. Then we presented the issue to say that there are recommendations that we've made as a community that are not being implemented.
Right.
And then they visited the area. 22 members of parliament visited the areas in 2015. That is still consultation, that is still engagement. So we had engaged the cabinet, we engaged the parliament. Right. Because we are aware that for a country to run, it has laws. And for a country to run, it has got elected members of parliament or cabinet who run the country. So we respect them. At that time, we were mandated by the community to say, no, we can't fight a fiscal war. We can't behave like we are in we are like warlords who fight without respecting the country's laws. So that has been going up to now. There's been efforts, and from 2016, we have also been involving the other civic society organizations to do some research, coming to meet the communities, because when we're speaking louder, some of those who are very skillful in their political language, I mean, especially who are driven by the ruling party mentality, would say we are opposition. They would want to identify us as opposition, not because we are opposition, but because we are raising very critical questions that we question their leadership.
Right.
When the civic society joined our work, because we, as platform for youth and community, we are part of the civic society, I want to be happy that there are many organizations that are in civil society who have been following on this. The first one was the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition. There was a research paper to say what are the views of the people from an independent position point of view. Then there was Transparency in the Nation of Zimbabwe. They also found that some of the happenings within the project was showing symptoms of corruption. Like some ministers would come to visit the plant, representing government. But when they go back to Harare, they become individuals. They would then come back in their individual capacities, and you find them receiving some form of support in their own political way. So we suspected that there's corruption. Transparency came, and they were research. Some of them prove that there were some dealings that are not, that fits to be defined as corrupt. Then there was also ZELA, Zimbabwe Environmental Law Association. They are very much skilled in terms of doing environmental issues.
Right.
The community complained of when the project was starting, of polluted water. Some of the water from Jerawachara River went up to pollute Save River, and there were some elephants downstream that died in some cattle, and it has been confirmed by many reports. So ZELA was coming in to also see some of the environmental issues, and also to, because ZELA works closely with some government ministries, so they came with the Ministry of Agriculture to do some research to say, when the community says we are not benefiting from the project, they came to confirm how much the project had benefited the community. And clearly it was found in their reports that are there tabled. They confirmed that very little was being accrued to the community, but the profits for the company were going on in that there was a lot that was needed to ensure that the community benefits from the project. Then there was also Zimbabwe Alliance for Human Rights. One of the tactics that has been used by the company has been to arrest the villagers who are speaking loudly, who are complaining, and first of all, they would be identified as opposition before they are arrested, so that when they are arrested, the public will say, but you are doing opposition work. So most of those who have been arrested, and we have stood on their behalf, to the extent that as I'm speaking to you on the 2nd of September 2021, no one is being prosecuted, because there were clearly no case. It would, like, they would say you trespassed. They would say, no, you resisted the drivers from plowing down your lane and so forth. And then there was also, we also have engaged up with the independent commissions. I think the public needs to know that the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission came, and they've produced the report that clearly confirmed that there are human rights violations and the instigation of the company, the security guards, and some labor issues. And also there's been the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. So we have engaged at that level. So if the public were to say, what have we done as the platform for youth and community development, we have engaged. We have done some research, and we have also done litigation. In 2018, in December, through this Lawyers for Human Rights, we have also gone to court, and our court papers were defended by the key stakeholders of the community. And some people, when you talk of land, some of the key stakeholders involves the war veterans.
Right.
So if you look at the leadership of the war veterans in Chipinge, they have supported litigation.
Right.
To say, no, we have not benefited from Greenfuel. And some of them are farmers. We have farmers who used to do business as commercial farmers during the time that there was ADA. When Greenfuel came, they were displaced. They can no longer do business as they were used to do. So they were part of supporting the litigation to say, we have lost our livelihoods, and we need this to be redressed. So the litigation that is supported by very key stakeholders, whom we respect, whom we see as representative of the key stakeholders in Chipinge, who are within the local communities affected by the project.
Right. You have really articulated well the work that you're doing. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Clarice Maduku. He's coming through from PYCD, Platform for Youth in Community Development. And we're talking about what's happening in Chisumbanje and Chinyamukwakwa villages and Greenfuel. So if you have any information and you want to be part of this conversation, do get in touch with us via WhatsApp platform or our social media handles, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and we'll be able to engage with you. Now, you raised a rather sad, if I may put it that way, a rather sad a situation where villagers are being arrested and they're being identified first as the opposition just to discredit their concerns. Now, how do you feel as a community representative, and how do you what would you say to them critics who then want to label you as something just because you're raising pertinent issues in your area?
Thank you very much. I think out of experience, we realize that if we just speak issues that are not grounded, somehow, if someone were to define us as opposition, it may appeal. But I think this has been those who follow Zimbabwean
Politics.
government, Zimbabwean politics, Zimbabwean government, they know that this is a too common accusation. So it doesn't worry me as a leader. I think most of those whom I work with as part of leadership, I'm not worried about that.
Right.
What we've done very well is to acknowledge that we have a government. When we started this engagement or the advocacy, we have involved the government. By then, there was the government of national unity,
Right.
led by the President Mugabe. And we knew we've studied their policies. And when we were engaging, we've always engaged at the level of the policy to say their Zim asset.
Right.
Then beyond that, after the government of national unity, there was the government of President Mugabe, who was on his own. Now with the President Emerson Mnangagwa. We engage this conflict on the basis of their policy. I think they're talking of national development strategy one
Right.
and so forth. They talk of Zimbabwe is open for business. We still engage on the basis of that. So one way of showing to the public that we are not advocating opposition politics. We are looking at issues of the national question. Land in Zimbabwe's economy depends on land. So we are very much aware that if 70% of our population is in the commune areas and they live on communal land, if there are displacements, involuntary displacements that are not grounded on policy,
Right.
it's as good as the government itself is undermining its own people.
Right.
So we are aware that the common people who are following us, they respect the work that we are doing. And when we go around, they shake our hands and say, you are doing very well, continue to be strong. So we remain strong. And from that motivation of doing what is representative of the people, we know clearly that we're also speaking clearly to the leadership in ZANU-PF and into the opposition. So I think I would want to explain to say, how have we done it? Within the local community, we have our traditional leadership. I think when we started this conversation, you had Headman Chinyamukwakwa speaking. You would also have admired the way Headman Chisumbanje spoke or speaks.
Right.
He is so clear, even perhaps more clear than what Headman Chinyamukwakwa is saying. And most of the traditional leadership within the area, in Chisumbanje area, there are 16 smaller village heads,
Right.
just like we have 8 in Chinyamukwakwa, all of them in totality. When we set a platform that we also meet every month, we don't sit because we are opposition, we sit because we are community.
Right.
And I think the public must also be clear that if someone were to identify in this conflict as a member of a political party, I don't think they're not wrong. I don't think they're wrong. They are a stakeholder. I think the MDC Alliance is a stakeholder, the MDCT, NCA, ZANU-PF, they're all stakeholders. But when they come to this conflict, they must not seek to push interests of their political party,
Of
but
course,
interests of the commune. That's why I feel that some of the players that we have who are political, they would say, if I were to be the next president, I would handle this issue better. So I think it works
Right.
for the president of the country or for those who are looking at this conflict politically to understand that there are also other political players who may contest them because they may have better solutions, because
Right.
policies are made in parliament. And for you to be in parliament, you must have gone through your political party or being a member of the independent parliament. That's where laws are made. So I don't think that it would be, we would be wise to want to narrow it to say a political party, as if being in a political party is wrong. But we must say, as Platform for Youth and Community Development, do we recognize that there are more political parties than the ruling party or the non-other opposite? All those who are, as long as they address the issues to say, how do we deal with the land question? How do we deal with the issues of the day?
And we have seen Professor Love Momaduku in that community. What sort of assistance is he bringing on board?
Yes, thank you very much for asking that question. Perhaps it can also be useful for the public to know that Professor Maduku is a native. He comes from Chipinge. He is one of the affected members of that community. So when he gets involved, he's also getting involved as a member of the community. That is the first step. Yes. Then the second point, that he is a lawyer. I think he has been representing so many people. And the public sometimes question him for that. I'm not a lawyer myself, but I understand that he has cases that he has dealt with. Some of the cases have involved the high-sounding people who might be in ZANU-PF. Like, I think he's represented people like Chombo, like Sukwere. I think there are many others that are not coming to me immediately. He's also represented some members of the opposition like Douglas Mundura, Tokozani Kupe, and so forth. And also he's represented others. So as a lawyer, I think the public must be aware that Professor Maduku is a lawyer. So because this issue has taken long, since 2008, and now 30, so the community felt like they could try. So there was a discussion with him to say, we want you to take this issue as a lawyer. But he did not just come in. In 2018, when we went to court, the court papers were defended by Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights on the 10th of December. And Greenfuel raised very technical questions. I think the public needs to know. When in 2010, Greenfuel sued me 100,000 for telling the public that the way they were operating in Jisumbanje was more like recolonizing us, because we fought for land and they're taking land away from the people. And I want to still confirm it today to say that I still believe that the way they are operating is an element of recolonization. But they identified themselves as Macdom. So when we're sending the copies in 2010, our lawyers in Zimbabwe, Lawyers for Human Rights, they say that this company has a tendency of reproducing many names. We may not be sure whether they're Greenfuel Pvt Ltd, Macdom Investment, or Macdom Ratings. So in the papers, we also identified them as Macdom using the papers that they used to sue me. That's how they identified themselves. So they raised a lot of technical questions to say we are not, they produced papers to say they are not Macdom, they are this and that. So the lawyers, after this court session, they found Greenfuel to be technical. So some of them are students of Professor Maduku. Some of them understands how Professor Maduku argues in court. So that was where they arrived at a conclusion. No, in this case, we would need someone with some technical expertise in court, like Professor Maduku. So we first talked about him before he was invited by the community. So when we reported back to the community to say, I think Greenfuel is raising this issue, everyone agreed that we needed Professor Maduku. So he was invited by the community first to say, come. Then he said, okay, I was looking at this case from the background, but now I have to take it up. So he has done 3 meetings with the community and he's taken up the case. He has listened, he has taken instruction. So from what he has said to the community, that I am dealing with this as a lawyer. Beyond being a lawyer, he has made it very clear that because he sits in Poland, I think he has capacity to meet with President Mnangagwa, who we think as a community that his executive role as the president and so forth. If there were to be that also political pressure, he may be able to understand. So we still believe, I mean, those who are following us, that President Mnangagwa is still a factor in resolving this problem.
He is the president.
Because at the moment, we feel let down by him. He was elected. He has not done much. I think that by going to court, and also we feel that the other process that we are doing, he will realize that this is not an issue take for granted. Because some of those who represent him at local level, I mean, those who represent ZANU-PF especially, or those who represent local authorities. I believe, as Clarice Maduku representing the platform for youth and community, that they have not done enough to give him evidence that this is a very serious case, which can also undermine his leadership credentials as the president of Zimbabwe.
Right. So if you were to have a meeting with President Emmerson Mnangagwa today, and he is saying what's going on in Chisumbanje, what's really going on the ground, because Greenfuels Pvt Ltd is a company. It's got its own public relations department. I was trying to get hold of them, but they were not picking up their landlines. So hopefully they'll respond to my DM. I sent them an email. They obviously are saying we have done so much for the community, in which you are saying they haven't really done as much as they could, given the capacity that they have. You are raising issues of what they're not doing well. But if you look at their website, if you look at their Facebook social media handles, you look at what they are calling the Wimbo projects, they're saying they're doing quite a lot. Now the president is there. He is bombarded with this information from Greenfuels. And there you are as a community trying to shout out and say, hello, we have got problems. And he invites you and say, come, let's sit down. Let's hear from you. What would you tell him?
Yes. Thank you for that. I think possibly you will also be able to listen to me. I mean, the social media is very important. You will be able to hear this. If I were to meet up with President Mnangagwa, I would do first tell him that he is misinformed about what is happening in Chisumbanje, in that Greenfuel as an investor has to do quite a lot. The first is the business issues that has to do with the mandatory blending. I mean, on that part, I think since Greenfuel has been defined as a national project, there are things that Greenfuel might be doing at the level of the national project, like how much they are contributing in terms of fuel or in terms of energy, into the talk of having contributed to the energy like electricity and so forth, perhaps how much money they are making. But I think there are issues to do with the community side. I think Greenfuel has failed dismally on the community side. Greenfuel has spent much of its time trying to handle the politics of the project, which is to say, what are the interests of ZANU-PF? But they've ignored the community side. And on the community side, there are three very key issues that I will try to raise for the president to know.
Right.
The first thing is to say that processes within the constitutions stipulates that such big projects like investments need to be consultative, needs to involve the community in terms of its stakeholders. There was a platform for that, which I was sitting myself. It was established in 2012 and then disbanded after the expiry of GNU, where people sit down and then say these are the issues that needs to be handled. So that popular participative consulting that is genuine has been destroyed. So I would say, no, if you still want you to be respected, because one of your policies that you are pro-people and the voice of the people is the voice of God, ensure that there is that platform. Because what currently exists, which he might be bombarded with, and I think there is being lied to, there are pro-government structures, right, that we know when they are in a platform where there are seniors, they don't speak out. Like, for example, if you have the DA sitting in the same office where there is the PA, they would see their leader. If you see the minister sitting in a platform where there's the president, they will see their senior. So what has happened is that most of the platform that has been created is the president's office, and they've got the police officers, the despot, they've got the chief. I think you heard Headman Chinyamukwakwa complaining about the chief. When they're in the meeting, right, they feel they've been psyched or they have been schooled to understand that this is a government project. So we must do what is good for the president. And those who do politics would say, no, don't say that you are undermining the president. So the president must be clear that he's not being undermined. That's the first thing. Then the second thing on that is to say that we have policies in the country, which is the Communal Lands Act. We seriously want the president to realize that the Communal Lands Act still operates like we were during the colonial era. During the colonial era, the communal land was customary land. Right. They say communal that they gave a role to the RRGCs, to the minister, to just speak and do a revisional. So whatever is happening is just for the president. So I would tell him that he has a responsibility as the administrator, as the president, to pressurize Greenfuel, to ensure that it is also respecting the side of the community.
Right.
They have not disclosed how much they are getting. I mean, the public who says Greenfuel is doing enough, it is because they don't know how much profit Greenfuel is making.
Right.
We were supposed to do it in terms of profit, in terms of percentage. How much percentage of their profits are they sitting out of the community? There is also another issue that the company has done, which is that they want to take 40,000 hectares of arable land. I think I would say to the president, I think if you still respect people, if you still respect communities, you can't give Greenfuel or allow Greenfuel to do, even if there were some papers signed somewhere in the private space, you can't allow one single investor to displace. In 2012, we were talking of 1,754 households having been displaced.
Yeah.
And 6 members for each household. We talk of more than 10,000 affected. Now the numbers have gone to 2,000. So we are talking of 2,000 households.
Yeah.
So we have gone up to 12,000 and people continue to be affected. The damage that has already happened as the company continues to expand has got a lot of negative effects to the community. There might be issues on the business side, on the economic side, but I feel that the Zimbabwe is open for business to President Mugabe, to President Mnangagwa, is doing a disservice to him in Chipinge because it has displaced. It is now that the company, the investor and the company are more important
than the people.
Than the people. But we understand that when politics is done, it is done on the basis of respecting people. It's done on the basis of saying when laws have become redundant, they are revised. So there are laws that needs to be revised. I don't think President Mnangagwa should be happy to be presiding over the Communal Lands Act that displaces the people. It's not in Chisobanje only. We talk of communities like in Sherez, in Shillonga.
Right.
People have been displaced. In Hwange, in Dinde, people have been displaced. I think there are also complaints there in Ndoko, in Ndoko Nkosi. I think even in former president, there's place. I mean, in Zimba, there are also complaints. So throughout the country, there are complaints of displacements.
Right.
And in particular in Chipinge, we have 38 wards, 30 of them are rural. And out of 30 rural, 16 wards are facing displacement. And they are using Communal Lands Act. So I would say to the president, you will have a bad
President
reputation.
Mnangagwa.
President Mnangagwa, I think I'm talking about president. You will have a bad reputation as a president if you were to preside over the Communal Lands Act that displaces the whole country, and then you are proud as a president.
Right. I was going to ask you how widespread the issue of displacements is, and I think you have articulated on that, involuntary displacements and land conflicts in Zimbabwe. Now, do you think, if you look at what's happening now, do you see ourselves as a nation finding solutions to these challenges of internal involuntary displacements of the people?
Certainly, I think when we look at issues of this nature that needs to address policies, issues of this nature that needs a stakeholders approach. I am confident that there are things that President Mnangagwa, I want to continuously call him president, that at least he will be able to respect what I'm saying. President Mnangagwa has done certain things that are very useful for the country that may need to be taken advantage. It's to open up space for platforms where people can speak. It's to open up respecting people who are proposing solutions for the country. And I think one of the issues to look at the economy, I know that when we focus on the economy, sometimes we focus on business. And President Mnangagwa's government has things that they need to revise. Because they are pro-business, they are pro-elite, and they are pro-self. It means that there is very little space in their policy to be pro-people. What it then does is that they may see themselves as advancing, but they are taking what they should benefit, because the people are suffering. And the people who constantly has to give them the mandate to be government. I want to compare, I'm persuaded to compare him a bit with his predecessor, President Mugabe, who was a populist, pro-people, and using the indigenization policy to say that there might be need to mix up and say that for Zimbabwe to prosper, we need good laws. And for Zimbabwe to prosper, we need a president who is able to open up space, not only for investment, but for dialogue that addresses the law. We can't continue to be operating with colonial laws. So I am a bit confident in that competitive politics that are beginning to happen. Apparently, one of the advantages that he might be having, which we are continuously trying to hit hard, is that in 2018, ZANU-PF had a kind of a super majority where most of those who are, the opposition in parliament, we have less members of opposition in parliament, with ZANU-PF getting the super majority. So some of those in ZANU-PF gets excited because they say we have numbers.
Right.
But they are failing to handle issues properly. I feel that that is a challenge that we need to provide and say the public must ensure that when they elect leaders at council level, at parliamentary level, at national level, they need to put leaders who are able to interrogate these issues. I think Zimbabwe has got a chance to grow well if it were to ensure the parliament is robust debate, and in cabinet people are tasked to do things that they will account. Just 2 weeks ago, there was Honorable Anxious Masuka. He came. He was invited by Greenfuel, and when he came, he had no time to meet up with the community. He just met the company, discussed, and then he was given the vision of the company. But as he was busy with the government, there are villagers from Chinyamukwakwa.
Yeah.
That 8 families were displaced and they're sitting in the public. They are in shacks currently. They have no food to eat. They have no shelter. He had no time to meet them. But when he goes back to cabinet, he will say things are okay.
Exactly.
So we are not expecting that our leadership who are voted or our leadership who are running policies would then be so narrow, would then go on to just see the investor as God. I think the investor must not be God. The investor must be questioned in terms of the policy of the country. So I feel that is, I want to now appeal as we are speaking to those who are listening to us, those who are especially the independent commission. I think we've raised these issues with the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. We've raised this issue with the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. Let them come and talk to people. If they feel we are speaking loudly or we are speaking too much, they should come and see other members of the public in terms of the stakeholders,
right,
and hear the story. So that at least we address issues, especially at the community level. We are not happy with the progress at the community level.
Right. You are not happy with the progress at the community level. Right. We are coming to you live from our Zimbabwe Daily Studios. And today we're talking to Mr. Clarice Maduku, coming through from the Platform for Youth in Community Development, all the way from Manicaland. And he is telling us about the challenges that are in Chisumba and Chinyamukwakwa areas, where Greenfuel is operating from. We would love to hear from you what your own experiences are. We would love for it, maybe if one of these days we would be able to come to your area and just have this interaction with the people, and also have Greenfuel get in touch with us so that we are able to really understand where they are also coming from, because everyone has got an opinion about this. And I'm sure when they look at how they're doing business, they're saying they're bringing in, and they are doing so well for the country in terms of providing the ethanol that our country so uses for fuel. But in closing, Mr. Maduku, just maybe five key points, key takeaways that whoever may not have the opportunity to listen to this whole conversation, 5 take-home points. What is the most important thing that we need to know about land rights, land acquisition in communal areas? And like you've said, we are operating on the Communal Lands Act, which is redundant anyway, and it's more colonial than relevant for us today. What message would you want to give as we conclude this conversation?
Okay, thank you very much, Ed, for giving me this opportunity. I feel that the first thing that we need to deal with is to revise our laws. So I would want to invite the public stakeholder to say that sometimes when those in government wants to look at Chisumbanji, to look at the Greenfuel saga, they want to say, what does the law say? And if they were to be narrow, they would go on to then say the president is the ultimate voice.
Right.
And through the minister and the local authorities. And then the local authorities and the ministers are always weak, so they would be looking up to the president. So let's revise the law. So that's the first point. Then the second point is to say that when investors come, the public must know that investors are not God.
Right.
Zimbabwe needs to look beyond investors, beyond investment. And that there was a time when we went to war, when we were in Rhodesia. One of the basic things that we did was to defeat colonialism that was very powerful, that was strong economically, because we believe that land matters. So it's to say that let's continue respecting our land, because land controls the economy of Zimbabwe. And it only controls the economy when it is in the hands of the public, which is communal land. And when my third point is to say that there are many land tenure issues that we have in the country, and that they must be respected as they are. To say, if we are calling a private investor, I think one of the points that the current regime of President Mnangagwa, they call themselves Second Republic, is to do with the PPP, the 3 Ps, public-private partnerships. So when there's a partnership, let those partnerships be transparent. I think is that the point. So one of the challenges that we have had with the investor like Greenfuel, I think it is also the same with other communities that are facing this land question, land issues. You say, let it be transparent. There are things that are community-based beneficiation. What kind of benefits do we have? We need a model, a compensation model, to say when an investor comes and displaces the community, this is the kind of model. We used to have the corporate social, the community share ownership trust. Or is it the best model? We need to revise with the stakeholder, which is participative. Currently, Greenfuel cedes back 0.5 hectares of land after taking the commitment. But I can tell you that those who are recipients of 0.5 hectares of land, they have not done much, except for those who never had land before. They are given 0.5, they've done much. But those who used to have 5 hectares of land beyond, this model does not work. So it must be revised. Then the fourth of my issue is to do with politics.
Right.
Since for you to get the mandate to govern as president, to get the mandate to be member of parliament, to get the mandate to be a councillor who represent the community, you are elected. The public has very little information which we need at the level of number 4 to work together, those who are in political offices and those who are in civic society. And I think that we've done much also as Platform for Youth and Community Development when we started as PYCD. There is a lot of research work which is clearly informative, which is research work that can confirm what is happening in terms of how many people have been displaced, how much they've suffered. So it's to invite people to work together as stakeholders.
Right.
Then the last of my point is to appeal to say that what is happening in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is signed treaties with the international community. As Platform for Youth and Community Development, we are rights-based. We use a rights-based approach, human rights-based approach. There are many human rights issues that has been affected, that has been violated with the Greenfuel. While they might want to also present themselves as doing business, doing this and that, we have listed a lot. The right to food, the right to health, the right to water, the right to information. There are so many, the right to land. Right. They are clearly evident from our work. We also need to appeal to the international community and say, what does the Africa is in the SADC? So we want to also look at SADC. We also want to look at AU. We also look to international and say, how are we dealing with the issues of involuntary displacements? where people are allowed to sit in the open. There is cold when they displace people during the time when it's cold, when it's raining. What does the international law say about such issues? So I would want to say with that last point to say that we are not in isolation. Zimbabwe is part of SADC. Zimbabwe is part of Africa. Zimbabwe is part of the international community. We also need to look at those statutes, how they are dealing with women. There are issues that are happening that violence women
and children.
Right to life. And they do not qualify if you subject them to international law. So I feel that these 5 issues for me are very key, and that over and above, we need a very responsive government, and that the President Mnangagwa must not allow us to see that vacuum. He is the president. Let him prove by ensuring that things that need to be addressed by the president are addressed.
Wow, thank you so much, Clarice, for that clarity and for speaking so passionately on behalf of your community where you are coming from. We were talking to Clarice Maduku. He is coming through from the platform for youth in community development, and they have been involved in the whole Chisumbanje Greenfuel saga for so long, and they continue to push our government to do something that is of benefit to the local communities. At the end of the day, the government is because of the communities where we are coming from. So 5 issues that he has raised, I will not repeat them, but let us try and follow and be responsive to what the people are saying. My name is Yvonne Muchaka. This is there's a comment that has just come through, and I'll try to read that. Maybe if you can give me a full screen. Thank you very much. I'm expecting the government to respect the will of the citizens. It is their land, and we all know that it will never bring any kind of development, but people from other regions will gain more than the natives. Okay, thank you so much for coming through. Indeed, as long as communities benefit from their resources, they are able to actually work very well in making sure that things are kept going. So thank you so much for coming through. Thank you, Clarice, for that impassioned plea, and to the president and the leadership in government. Anzi, be responsive to the calls of the people. Thank you so much for joining me. See you again next time on Zimbabwe Daily. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of day.